Last year was a great year for the Volvo. It got a lot of different upgrades, but this year we're going to start knocking off some of those issues that might have came up throughout the year. One of which being this flex pipe for the wastegate. To be completely honest, I was learning how to TIG weld, and I might have neglected how thin that metal was. So it's on the list this year to take care of. Now, in my ultimate wisdom, when I put in the 3-inch downpipe, I made it so big and so tight that you have to either remove the engine or remove the bell housing to get it out. So if we're going to take the transmission out, it only makes sense to go through the transmission too, as it's seen some better days. It's gone through at least 3 owners. It's been in 3 of my cars, and I've abused it the whole way through. So yeah, second gear always would grind. If you're in it to win it, it's yeah, it would definitely grind in second. So why not take a look at it? One of the things when we're taking apart this any Ford, to be honest, Ford with these 12-point bolts on the drive shaft, I am not sure who in their ultimate wisdom thought that was a good idea. It's a I think it's a M12 or 12 millimeter bolt with a 12-point head. Needless to say, I have discovered that all of my 12 millimeter sockets are garbage. They've been stripped out over the years, and I inadvertently made that a full circle instead of a 12-point. So you can see me here fighting with it and actually bending a wrench, trying to crack it loose, which is definitely fun. Anytime you get into a project, it's always great to fight with it a little bit. That way you appreciate it way more when it works properly, right? Not quite, but I tightened those bolts, so I'm the only one to blame for the lack of being able to get that sucker off. So it was okay. It's okay when it's just me to blame. I'm okay with that. If I blame myself, it's not that big of a deal. If somebody else, I would have had probably some different words. Anyway, so here we are. We're just pulling out the transmission. Funny part is actually on this car, most of the stuff you can't get sockets on. You can do like a swivel, but by the time it would have to be like a shallow socket with a tight swivel and probably 3/8. So yeah, I don't have those. I'll just use wrenches. It's not a big deal. But yeah, so we're gonna pull out this transmission. So this transmission, this drivetrain, comes from a 1986 Ford Thunderbird Turbo Coupe. Now, I thought most of those T5s were pretty much the same. I maybe neglected to think how much difference there is between the T5s. T5 5-speed transmissions from Borg Warner. Now, they were in, your Mustang 5-liter. They'd come in like Chevy S10s, a Camaro, Firebird, Trans Am, all that. Sorry, Trans Am might not be accurate. But basically it was scattered throughout domestic cars. And when you had a 4-cylinder, you'd have a much steeper gear ratio. So this car, this drivetrain, in all of the cars that I had it in, first gear is so quick. It is basically pointless. You can pretty much roll out in second if you really wanted to. But that's not really very efficient, right? It's a little bit too tall to actually start off in second. You need first, but first doesn't last for very long. You actually see in some of the burnout videos that it's hard to get at wheel speed because you run out of gear so fast and it'll go right to rev limiter. So a good thing about these T5s is that it's really 4 bolts that bolt the transmission to the bell housing. In this particular case, yeah, it's got a single trans mount bolt, and then yeah, transmount out, and it's relatively light too. It's not that brutal of a transmission. It's not that heavy, and really it's simple, right? It's only 5-speed. It doesn't have to be crazy. But yeah, it's relatively easy, even to hand bomb for the most part. It never seems to fail. If you've got a drain bucket underneath the car, something's bound to fall into it. But I never thought that I would actually drop my GoPro into it. And this is the moment right there that it fell into the bucket. That's fine. I just washed it off with soap and water. It's not a big deal. But that brings me to how great brake clean is nowadays. In Canada, they've changed the brake clean, and if you've noticed brake clean prior or after, it's useless. And what it really likes to do is eat everything plastic and pretty much destroy it. So the GoPro mount that I had to a magnet is all like discolored and nasty. And feel free to leave in the comments your ratio of different chemicals that make whatever brake clean was before the mandate. I think that was 2024 that they brought it up and actually changed it, because the new brake clean in Canada is useless. Here's the fluid out of that T5. It was changed when it went in. So there's some metallics, to say the least. Let's go with some synchro material, a little bit of gear material. Yeah, there's always some, but this one seems a little bit more than usual. So yeah, here we're gonna tear it down. You'll notice that shifter I just took off. That's just it's actually, I think it's I don't even think there is a name for that shifter. I think it's so off make that it is yeah, it doesn't have a name. It would actually vibrate apart. The bolts for the shifter would actually start coming out of the spots, out of the springs and everything. So that's one of the upgrades I'll be doing this year, which is going to a Hurst shifter. Yeah, just tired of tightening that thing up. I didn't put Loctite on it. I could have, but on this car, that bell housing area, the shifter is almost recessed, and it is relatively difficult to get it out unless you're doing this and taking the transmission apart. So there's lots of great videos on YouTube for tearing down a T5 transmission. So I'm not going to make my own. I'm just going to show you this in super fast speed that makes me look like I'm super quick, versus the other ones that are out there where people are talking and breaking down exactly what's going on. Yeah, I don't need to just repeat what they're saying. Obviously you can watch that if you're going to do one yourself. It's relatively easy to come apart. My biggest suggestion is just to lay everything out, so you can organize yourself and not mess it up as far as process of disassembly and reassembly. One of the things I fought with here was that roll pin. You have to really clear the shaft to get the roll pin right out, and the roll pin's longer than you may expect. It's probably like 3/4 of an inch long. So that's kind of where I fought with that, just to take it apart, but not really a big deal. Once that's off, kind of opens up most of it. So really we're tearing down this transmission to figure out what's going on and why it's grinding in second. That's the main reason behind it. Like I said before, it's been through multiple owners. It's been in multiple of my own cars, and yeah, it's been through hell in most cases. And honestly, if you're going to power shift anything, you're going to power shift second, right? So yeah, second's going to take the heat. And in this case, basically once we start pulling this apart, we start seeing some of the deterioration and the wear that's going on. It also kind of brought to light that something else that I might have overlooked. So once we pop these shift forks off, There's a little bit of wear on the shift fork guides, I believe is the word for them. So yeah, they're a wear component. They're easily replaceable. It's not a big deal. But some of the side of my shift forks were actually polished, where I believe it was touching a gear. So what I was thinking was that the drive shaft was actually getting pushed in. Now that seems a little ridiculous for the most part, right? Because you'd either think it's either that or your shift forks are out of adjustment, or your shifter's shifting too far. So my drive shaft, it barely had any movement in. When you're like, once you unbolt it off the differential, you've got maybe I'd say it's less than a quarter of an inch forward into the transmission, and then it bottoms out. My concern was that under certain bumps, you'd actually get that drive shaft bottoming out into the transmission, which would basically ram that shaft into the transmission, ramming the gear into the shift fork. Now that's a theory. I'm sure some can clarify whether that's actually a thing that can happen or not. But in the meantime, I also got the drive shaft shortened 3/4 of an inch to kind of prevent that, to give additional room. So yeah, I just continued tearing apart this transmission. And one of the things we come across is that the synchros and the synchro teeth are damaged on, second gear. Of course they are, right? So they're not pointy, right? They're basically square. And that square section doesn't allow them to actually, engage fully, and then you grind a gear, right? So what I started looking for was a new second gear. Now ultimately we can file down these gears, we can make them pointy again. That requires time, and I was thinking, well, I knew that I had another transmission, and I started looking for another second gear instead of grinding down the teeth. And ultimately you can still make it work, and if you didn't really care about grinding second that much, you'd just be patient and no power shifting and so on. But we want to have fun with the car. That's the whole purpose behind this car. So it only makes sense to make sure we can get into second and actually have good engagement and without grinding. So I started looking for a second gear, and the problem with this transmission is that it was in the 85-86 T-Bird and the Mustang SVO only. It is a world-class transmission, which is fine, but this gear ratio is specific to those cars. So that means there's less gears out there, there's less parts out there. If we start going through this, first gear is a 403 gear ratio. Second gear is a 237 gear ratio. Third is 149. Fourth, of course, is 1:1, and fifth is 0.81. So with this gear ratio that it has, it's difficult to find that second gear. And in lieu of grinding it down, I knew I had a spare transmission on the side just sitting in the garage. Unfortunately, someone had opened it, so it's not overly great, and there wasn't a lot of hardware for it. So my spare transmission has a 397 first gear, 234 second gear, 148 third gear, obviously 1:1 for fourth, and 0.79 for fifth. So all of that little shift should make this vehicle, make the Volvo, feel a little bit better. We're gonna have a little bit longer first gear. Actually, all the gears are gonna be a little bit longer, right? So even for autocross, if we look at it on how it was on the track, I would basically have to hop between obviously first and second, right? But first was way too short, and then second, it was almost too short as well. So you basically walk into second and then like hit the rev limiter, almost have to go into third. So what we're thinking is that with the other transmission, the new transmission, we should have no problem. Well, not no problem. This should basically shift all of that RPM and allow us to get a little bit more without having to shift and without actually running out of gear. So pretty excited about that, although it is relatively simple. Yeah, a little bit of gear change. This should make it better. Now, if you watched that other video before, you also see that we changed our rear differential. Now, that was another problem that we're having in autocross, is basically we'd go, and once we started shifting weight in the corners and under like a full U-turn, you would pick up basically one tire. Now it's not picked up, it's got less weight on it, which makes it easy, which means it's easier to spin. So we would basically spin that tire like crazy and then grab a gear, and the car would bog down and it'd be super annoying. So you couldn't really you didn't have good power flow, didn't have really good power control. So with the Eaton True Track, that's going to correct that too. So all of that is pretty good. All of that is great upgrades. This should make autocross that much better. We should be able to hit second without it grinding. So yeah, we're basically trying to knock off all those things that are on the crap list for last year, the small things. Now ultimately we only went out to one autocross with the Volvo, but we kind of shook down all of those problems, and why not make it better, especially when you got some downtime in winter / spring. So this is my parts transmission, or my spare transmission, and overall it was in much better shape. So, well, let's back that up. As you can see, it's kind of rusty in the gears because someone decided to untake those top cover bolts off, and the tail housing cover didn't have any bolts in it either. So there was some moisture in there, there was no transmission fluid in there, and yeah, we have some rusty gears, but those shift forks, better condition. The gears, first gear, second gear, third gear, fantastic as far as no mushroomed ends, right? Nice and clean for the engagement teeth. So that's all great. Now I did opt for a rebuild kit. It's just a Ford Motorsport kit from Summit Racing. Yeah, I just point and shot as far as a world-class rebuild kit. I'm sure you could break it down and buy the items individually. I just went for, let's go for the whole kit and go that way. At least I have everything. So that made sense. And then ultimately the other transmission, which was in use, the bearings were fine. There's really no issue there. So it almost made more sense to rebuild this transmission over that transmission, because I have new bearings and I have new synchros and new synchro teeth, new synchro springs, and all the other stuff that comes in the kit, seals and so on. So that made sense. Anyway, this is it. Now those teeth have a little bit of rust on them. Basically what I ended up doing was putting them in a rust cleaning solution, and just letting them soak, and then scrubbing them down with a bit of a brush, and I believe it was a Scotch-Brite. It's not enough to actually cut the gear or take any metal off, just enough to take the rust off. Now I'm sure there's other ways that this could be done. That was just the way that I chose, and honestly it wasn't too bad. We had the wastegate removed, so it only makes sense to add or change the wastegate spring, right? The idea here is we're going to change how much we're controlling with the micro squirt, and basically we're going to have a base boost level which will be closer to 20 psi versus I believe it was, I want to say 12. So ultimately we don't have to make as much, we don't have to control as much with the wastegate solenoid. We'll still control it beyond 20, but up to there, that'll be fun. So I'm in there, we're pulling out the we're pulling off the bell housing. So obviously it makes sense, we're going to pull off the clutch. We're right there, we might as well do a clutch. We had just a stock clutch, stock replacement clutch. I believe it's Exidi, if I got that pronunciation correct, and a factory flywheel, all from Rock Auto. So good stuff, and you can see it worked out great considering I beat the crap out of it and it withstand it. What I wanted to do was upgrade it to a spec clutch with a lightweight flywheel. So this engine can really use a little bit of a quicker rev. So that's the idea between the lightweight flywheel. I've actually run that on my Audis as well. They have a dual mass flywheel, so it's much more weight. But the way they rev up, it's fantastic, right? Once you have a lightweight flywheel, you'll never go back to a big, heavy rotational mass. Because yeah, why? It's really nice that it revs up. So we went with a stage 3 spec clutch. The stage 3 clutch from spec is rated up to 425 foot-pounds of torque. We didn't really have an issue with the stock one. Now obviously stock, even a stage 1 is 255, so I believe stock would probably be what, 200, 230. We didn't even see any slipping on the flywheel. Now I don't think we're not making that power, I just think we're spinning tires instead, which obviously is another problem. But we're gonna have better traction this year, so it obviously makes sense to upgrade the clutch as well. This does have a replaceable insert. If you're doing this, just make sure all those bolts are tight. There's quite a few of them. I just went over them, they seemed all right. Something else I noticed is that this actually came balanced, so the flywheel is marked to the pressure plate, so something to keep in mind. No, I did not hit it with the impact until it was over tightened. I just brought it down lightly, and then it's still under torque, as you'll see in the next part here where I'm torquing it. It still moves, so it's not like other shows on YouTube where they just hang on to the impact as hard as they can go and see how many duggas it can take. Anyway, I'm a big fan of torquing. I think that way you're less likely to miss something, and I don't know, do you want your flywheel bolts coming out? I don't. These ones are actually spec flywheel bolts. It's just easier than buying the Ford ones. Sorry, not spec. These are ARP bolts, which is just easier to order them versus trying to find the factory ones or order them from Ford or whatever. My particular setup didn't have the right bolts because there was pieces missing when I got this engine transmission combo back. So anyway, that was an easy solve. If you are into using torque wrenches, or you're going to get into the trade or start doing stuff on the side, that snap-on torque wrench you just saw in that picture is excellent, right? It actually has a vibration when it gets to the torque. It'll show you when you hit your torque into the LEDs on the side, or you're getting close in yellow. You hit your torque, it'll go to green, and then if you over torque, it'll actually go red. I've used quite a few torque wrenches, even click type, and people are like, oh, why do you need a digital? Once you have it, you won't go back. It is an excellent torque wrench, a great investment, and by no means am I endorsed by Snap-on, although if they want to endorse me, that'd be great. But I purchased that out of pocket, and yeah, I will never ever sell it because I use it like crazy. and it's so nice to use. Plus it has a little bit of a flex head, not crazy, it's not floppy. Still very nice unit. Anyway, so I will do a crisscross pattern, and then I'll do like a full round check. That's just my own paranoia and my consistency in repair. I just like it that way. That's my style. You can do however you like. Some guys will even mark it after. Usually when I'll do engine work, I'll do that, and I'll go into actually marking it. That way you kind of make that mental note of, hey, this is how this is set up. So putting the transmission back in was actually a little bit tough, tougher than what I was expecting. I just think that I was having some issues with the release bearing and the slave cylinder, for lack of better terms. It was just binding as we were going together, so that was kind of odd. But basically you're in these scenarios and you're putting the stuff back together. Sometimes you can be just a little bit out of alignment for your splines to your pilot bearing. So what we were doing here, once I get the transmission close, I actually had my son just rotate the engine over to try to get those all to line up. So that helped a bit. We actually just depressed the clutch slightly, or disengaged the clutch to release some of the tension, and then it just went right in. So something to keep in mind. It doesn't always go perfect. It's not always super simple, and it's not like your typical TV shows and go, well, look, TV magic, it's already done. Sometimes it takes a little bit of love to get it in there, and it is what it is. But the key is to know what you're missing and why it's not going in, or how to fix it, because otherwise you'll just stand there or lay there trying to put this transmission in and it's all sideways, or it's not guided, or you got whatever backwards, or who knows what. So anyway, the key is to adapt, make it happen, figure out how to get out of the pickle if you get in one. So anyway, here you can see the 3-inch downpipe too, all header wrapped. Idea behind that is just to kind of keep that heat down. There's a lot of heat in the underhood of the Volvo. It doesn't have the airflow that the newer cars do, and at least that's what I think. I think it's kind of jammed in there, kind of gets, you know, whatever you want to call it, stuck underneath the hood. So I'm trying to figure out how we're going to play that out, if we're going to end up, you know, just cutting a hole in the hood. Trying to think of what could be tasteful. I know I talked about it a little bit last year too. Some mentioned just to pop open the backside of the hood. I like to actually have the hood closed. That is a temporary solution for sure, but I'm trying to execute a tasteful solution for the hood issue, or sorry, for the heat issue on the hood. So if you have any ideas, feel free to comment, or just reach out to me. I have no problem. I'd love to get some input, because I think it's tricky trying to get it to you know, to be tasteful. Sometimes it some of the hood scoops, and like a cowl hood would be cool, but I don't think a cowl hood fits this kind of car. It's too early. It predates cowl hoods, right? That should be a little bit closer to the 70s versus mid 60s, especially being Swedish too. I don't think there was a lot of different hood scoops and hood vents for Swedish cars, let alone, you know, early 60s cars. But again, I'm open to people's opinions, their ideas. That'd be awesome, right? All of it helps. ratio. We're not really topping out that RPM like running out of gear. So that's really nice. We're really just bringing in the clutch right now. So taking it easy for the most part. Until we can't stand that anymore. But clutch is a little bit more snappy. Not a lot of forgiveness in the clutch, so to speak. It just bites, which is really good. It's what we want. But as far as the transition from the stock one to this one, it's quite snappy. So it's a little much to get used to out of the hole. You can't really ride the clutch that much. It just wants to fully engage, so got to be on the ball. But other than that, car feels great. Versus being stuck with that. So I'll have to go back and check my wastegate settings or wastegate controller settings to make sure there's nothing sticking on. I'm pretty sure I zeroed it all, so there could still be something there. So far the only thing I don't really like is this HERS shifter, the ball for the HERS shifter rather. It's like a 2 1/4 inch ball. That is a huge shifter handle. It's unnecessary. So I'll probably drop it down to like a 2-inch one. It'll just feel more natural versus this huge deal. But other than that, it's all right. So right now we're cruising. It's about 70 kilometers an hour. We're seeing 1700 RPM in 5th gear. So definitely reasonable. As we're breaking in the clutch, we're also doing a little bit of tuning, mainly because we had that exhaust leak. So we're just set up in auto tune, going through the bases, letting it pull out when it needs to pull out, or add when it needs to add. That's lovely. I think I got a piece of metal trim back there that's rattling against the body, so we'll have to fix that. Only comes in under full lug, so that's amazing. But basically we're into shakedown, right? The car's just put on the road. We've maybe put on, I don't know, 70 kilometers. So probably go a week of shakedown and fix all the little things that we overlooked or didn't anticipate, and we'll go from there. Hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope I didn't bore you too much with all the transmission disassembly, reassembly. Please subscribe, like, share, all that stuff. I really appreciate the support. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.